Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today comes at us from Martin. Hi Bryan, some Screamo this time. Wow, owls. With the song 1989, the best 4 years of my life. Pick Your Patterns was one of my favorite albums back then in 2005, and this song, together with I'll Be Your Huckleberry, was the most played off of it. Enjoy! So that's what we're going to check out today. Some, wow, owls. I don't know, that just feels, it's like, Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Like, the way that you say the band name, like, wow, owls. It goes with it. You can't just say, wow, owls. Not a good way to say their band name. I'm kind of curious how they say it on stage. And they're like, hey, thanks for coming to the show. We are, wow, owls. I wonder how they say it. Anyways, this is getting ridiculous. Let's dive in. 1989, the best 4 years of my life. So we have a verse that's just 2 chords, lots of compression. Nice bass shining through here. The same 2 chords with a different passing tone. Introducing a new rhythm though.
You can't hug a photograph or kiss a melody, but you can still relive memories I've encased in tattered transparencies of worn out grooves, smoothed out by use from a needle, tracing impressions of directions. You can pick up my broken body, dust me off. Remember that I tried, remember that we all tried. Maybe this time the words will make sense. Is it so bad you lose your thoughts like mine? The bombs, the mind, were painless, numbing, overpaid. Never mind, never mind. Maybe this time
An accelerando? Very subtle if there is. Yeah. Definitely an owl.
Emotion, the memories
Nice division of the guitar parts. And back to the opening.
You can touch me, you can touch me. Your melodies and harmonies erase me. You can touch me, you can touch me. Your melodies and harmonies erase me.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to check this group out because that was fun. So the song's really divided into 3 sections. We have the opening idea that presents our harmonic movements. We get a variation on that rhythmically. The harmony stays the same. That's just those 2 chords bouncing between home and then tension and then home and then tension. We use those to develop a new riff that's a bit softer and lighter, and then we do the build up. Those ideas, the riffs sort of just become strumming at a certain point. We just have the snare roll and from spoken word to screaming. And then that takes us to the new riff and harmonic pattern in that 3rd section, which gives us different chords. It's a very different idea, but sonically it feels the same. It captures a lot of the same layering, a lot of the same placement of the instruments, although the guitars are doing their own thing here, which is very cool. And it's just a very different composition. Sorry, at the end of the song, different composition with similar vibes and atmospheres to the beginning of the track. And of course, that very fluidly takes us back into the opening of the song, the original riff, the original chord progression, and kind of bringing the song full circle. So it allows it to be linear throughout the track while still having enough ties to previous ideas that it feels like a natural movement of concepts. And I think that's one of the best ways to go about writing a song like this, especially if you're going for a linear idea, is to ensure that you're not just jumping to brand new random ideas, that there's always something that connects it to the past, even if your transitions are going to be on the harsher side. So yeah, I mean, just from that like very bird's eye view, high level, or I guess low level analysis of it, it's done really well. And everything in this just sounds great. Now, a lot of this song, though, is based around the vibe. We have rest and we have tension, and rest and tension, and that's the entire song there. It creates something that feels rather dark, as even the rest has a negative connotation to it. It isn't something that feels resolute or final, it just feels less tense than the tense chord. And it creates something that has a bit of darkness to it harmonically when we pair that with these massive guitar sounds, this massive bass sound, this big compressed drums, and of course the screamed vocals. Everything is heightened, everything is over the top, everything is massive, and it ends up feeling larger than life and weighty. It ends up feeling incredibly dramatic. And I think that's really what helps elevate this song and what kind of forces you to get on that level. I think if you're not a fan of emo or screamo, and maybe even post-hardcore a little bit, some of the more elevated offshoots of punk, this may kind of be a bit cheesy. I believe it. If you come from a metal realm listening to this, you probably feel the same way I do coming from this and listening to death metal and how over the top that can be and how extreme that can be at times. But I think that much like death metal, the key is that while you're being over the top musically, aggressively, sonically, and even lyrically, the point is that you have to play it straight. You have to say we're taking it seriously and hope that the audience gets in on that. Sometimes that's effective, sometimes it isn't. And I don't know if there's like an objective way to look at that. I think it's just going to change from person to person, and there's no way to formulaically ensure that your music, as extreme as it might be, is taken seriously at face value. But for me, anyways, I listen to this and I am sucked in immediately to it. It is ridiculously over dramatic, 100%. But I buy into that. And I'm saying, okay, you are feeling an extremely heightened emotion here. You are presenting this song in an extremely heightened way. Everything is larger than it should be. Everything is louder than it should be. Everything is more aggressive than it should be. You obviously feel larger or more so than you should. You're showcasing a bigger emotion, and maybe it actually feels that large to you. Maybe you just want to elevate the way you feel. Regardless, I'm buying into it. And if you don't, if you find this to be like super cheesy or too dramatic or anything like that, like totally valid. I get it, because this music honestly is. It's all about buy-in. And sometimes you can buy into it, and sometimes you're like, nope. And I think that's one of the fun parts about emo for me and post-hardcore, is that I find it really easy to buy into these heightened sounds and these over-the-top, over-dramatic portrayals of emotion. That's really what this song has going for it at every moment. It's that it just goes big all the time. I mean, that build up, the middle section of this song, that's kind of ridiculous, right? 36 bars of snare rolls. Just getting louder and faster, and spoken word turning to the whiny emo screaming stuff. So, like, that's kind of ridiculous. But I buy into it. I can accept that as an extremity in a way that death metal doesn't always get me. Sometimes I listen to that music, I'm like, I don't know, man. Or like power metal. I think it's really easy to not buy into that too. So, like I said, if you don't get this, that's fine. Exposure helps 100%. Same way I started to buy into and get more death metal. Black metal, I still have a hard time buying into. That's an extremity that it's kind of tough for me. But, you know, exposure helps, but also just being open to it. Sometimes that'll work. It'll click. Other times it won't. Like I said, there's just no objective, formulaic way to look at that to force yourself to say, okay, I'm going to enjoy this for what it is. It's just like something in our bodies. I don't know. If anybody has any insight into that, something that helps you buy into more extreme or over the top or over dramatic music, let me know. I would love to pass on information to help people get into music they have a tough time getting into. But this song, I mean, just to wrap up this first thought, it's way over the top, and that's absolutely a key element of the genre of music. So, I mean, that'd be like, again, coming back to death metal and saying, well, it's too extreme. Well, yeah, it's an extreme metal. Of course it's extreme. Like, the fact that it is as loud and aggressive and abrasive as it is, it's a feature, not a bug. And the same thing's going on with something like this. Now, a lot of this song is hyper focused on singularity. Now, coming from punk, that makes sense. Punk does have riffs that are very catchy and memorable, but there's also the side of punk that's just very noise, very texture based. And I think that a lot of Screamo comes from that. Now, we do have some nice riffs in here, but I think more than anything, what I'm going to remember from this track is the feeling of it, the texture of it. Everything works together for that. If you listen to the drums, you'll find that their rhythms, the rhythmic patterns are usually on par with, working alongside or within the rhythmic patterns of the guitars. The two guitars are frequently working together as well, playing the exact same riff, the exact same rhythm, sometimes fluctuating on notes in order to craft wider harmonies, but you'll also find them just playing the exact same thing too. It really isn't until that penultimate section where they do their own thing. They're kind of off in their own worlds. We get two different guitar parts, but for the majority of this song, they're just working together, playing the same thing. The bass sits in alongside that. In the second section, when we brought the energy down, the bass had its own line. But more often than not, the bassist was following in the footsteps of the guitarists. And so all of this kind of comes together to create this singular rhythm, this singular vibe, this singular harmony. Not a lot of complexity to that. We get all of this sonic density from the compression, from the size of these instruments. It is a wall of sound that has all of these clashing sounds going on within it, these clashing textures based on the compression and the dissonance. And as the dissonance gets amplified, through the overdrive, through the amplification of the amp. It's part of the name of the device. Those sound waves end up becoming more prominent in the textures of and the coloring of the tone. And so we end up with a track that feels very gritty, very crackly and staticky, but very larger than life. It is a massive sound for just two guitars, a bass, and drums. And yet it fills up so much space. It is that wall of sound, of crunchy sound, really, that defines all of this song. And so it kind of puts a lot of the weight on the vocals, I think, to have any sort of strong element of characteristic to this, something to separate it from other instrumental wall of sounds. And I do think that the vocalist here is extremely charismatic. They deliver on a lot of the overdramatic elements here with the way that they express themselves, the flow and fluidity, the rising and falling action of their sentences, the way that they will take a specific syllable of a word and really lean into it, even at times putting a harsh vocal in the middle of a clean vocal section. Shifting between harshes and cleans and using these to create punctuation within their flow. It allows them to put emphasis on specific words or moments, whether that is part of the sentence itself. They really want to emphasize a word, or maybe they just want to emphasize a part of the music, of the atmosphere, to create a very hard moment in the song to help with pulse or phrasing. In a lot of ways, it is the exact opposite of death metal harshes. And I don't know why I keep coming back to death metal, but maybe it's just because they're both extremities in music, and I have very different relationships to these two, almost exact opposite relationships. But when it comes to the vocals here, they're exceptionally dynamic and expressive. Death metal, especially growls, tend to be very monolithic, one tone, one sound all the time. And this may be because I grew up on music like this. As far as harsh, extreme music is, this is my home. This is what I listened to first. Before that, radio rock and, jazz and classical. I played trumpet and vibraphone. And what else did I play? I guess that was primarily it. Flugelhorn too. Love flugelhorn, man. Such a fantastic voice. Anyways, again, getting distracted. I just didn't listen to a lot of extreme sounds, honestly. And teenage years, I got into Screamo and post-hardcore. And this is where I started to hear more gnarly guitar tones and harsh vocals. And I really think this defined a lot of what I enjoy. I don't know that it defines what I enjoyed in music, because I already enjoyed melodically strong, harmonically exploratory music from jazz and classical. But I think it really merged everything and took the more exploratory elements of classical and jazz with the memorable modern writing that you would find in radio rock, and kind of push them together into a direction that was just more extreme than what my parents listened to. And that's pretty typical for most kids. You kind of combine what you like and find something that your parents don't. But yeah, this vocalist right here, I think, absolutely sells everything that I love about this style of music. And it's probably why I gravitated to it then, and why it helped develop my taste in more extreme music after. Because there is still a charisma to it. It is exceptionally expressive. And there's such a dynamic quality to the vocals. And I think it's worth interrogating too. This is not a song that is perfect. The transitions are a bit rough throughout this. There's kind of, we were doing this, now we're doing this. There's usually some sort of compositional component, a nice callback, whether that's a harmonic callback or a riff-based callback, something to help tie it to other things, but the transitions themselves are very abrupt. We did this, the next bar we're doing this. The production on this is not great. It is very gritty. It's mid-fi at best. There's many components to this in the way that it sounds that, in other songs, other bands I have criticized. But because I love the music of this, I can get past them. It's not that I like them in this context. They just don't stand out to me as much. They don't disrupt my listening, my appreciation and joy that I have while listening to this, like they do in other tracks, where the music isn't necessarily something I would listen to on my own. And then they also have these elements that I'm not a big fan of. And so they stand out. It's more of a compounding element in those. So, because it is something I've been thinking about myself, why is it post-hardcore, Screamo, these are genres that lots of, 2000s era, mid-fi, very compressed production, harsh transitions, they're all over the place, just like in metal. Why do they work for me here? And I don't think it's that they work for me, they just don't stand out. I don't really notice them. And familiarity helps with that too. After you've listened to an album 100 times, you don't really notice the harsh elements too much. Everything's kind of been sanded down by nostalgia and familiarity. So let's hit some lyrics on this. Lyrically, this is a bit scattered. We pick up at the beginning, which honestly, I thought the song was going to go in a direction of artists being molded by record labels in order to be more palatable to the masses. It says, this is a picture postcard, greetings from wherever I am. I've been handled and perused by secondhand men in hand-me-down shoes. You want me to sing a song? What key do you want it in? I've got perfect pitch. Dress and doll me up and I'll assume your role. Sounds like he's been forced to do a bunch of stuff that he doesn't necessarily want to do, but he's forced to do. But it is within his craft, assuming that this is not singing from a character's perspective, and it is lived experiences of the lyricist, who I'm assuming is the vocalist. They can sing. And they're saying, do you want me to sing a song? Pick a key. I've got perfect pitch. So it feels like a way of him saying he's been forced to play music like a jester, told when and how to do it rather than the free form elements of singing that he wants to do. Says later, dissect me, but don't disappoint me. You can lay me on the table and cut me up with your scalpel. I'll slip on the concrete just to get it right. I'm your fool of all fools, trapped in grammatical errors. Once again, being entertainment for someone else. You've got to figure out who I am, make me into whoever you want me to be, and I will get everything perfect. I am your fool of fools. But then we shift perspectives. He says, monsters make love in my closet with the skeletons, and the doors are opened wide. These words are recorded from black lungs. This is a very different perspective. He's basically saying, I'm an open book. I've made mistakes. I have skeletons in my closet. It's not just skeletons either. It's skeletons with monsters, and they're doing things in there you don't want to know about. He says the doors are open wide. But then we have what I think is one of the more lyrically interesting sections, not because of what it's saying, but because of how it's said. This section shifts rhyme schemes so frantically. This, I believe, is when we dipped the energy down and started to build it back up. But he says you can't hug a photograph or kiss a melody, but you can relieve memories encased in tattered transparencies and worn out grooves smoothed out by use from a needle tracing impressions of direction. I don't know what he means by all of this. The idea that photographs and melodies are things that can trigger memories, but you can't do much else with them, is a way of saying, I suppose, that memories are still useful, or having keepsakes is useful, even if it isn't as good as the original thing. They can still trigger memories. But I really like how we went from relive memories in tattered transparencies, and that's like an AA rhyme scheme. It's the last syllable of each sentence, and then moving to worn out grooves smoothed out by use. And that it talks about how tired he is after all of this. He says, you can pick up my broken body, dust me off. Remember that I tried. Remember that we all tried. Maybe this time the words will make sense. Is it so hard to lose your thoughts like mine? And then we come to an alliteration. He says, embalms the mind with painless, numbing Novocaine never minds. He says, maybe this time the notes will fit the tune. Maybe this time the words will make sense. But the painless, numbing Novocaine never minds. We wrap up the song with, we're not unique, but we can pretend as long as we stand on the shoulders of shadows of giants that were. I like that. There's 8 billion people on this planet now, right? The idea that all of us are totally unique is ridiculous. On a certain level, we are all unique, of course, but we are crafted by our environments, and there are only so many environments that we can come from and be within, the whole nature and nurture element. We're going to run out of permutations quickly. And so total uniqueness is impossible. He says, but we can pretend to be unique as we stand on the shoulders of shadows of giants. I really like that. We're not actually standing on the shoulders of the giants, we're standing on their shadows. It is something that tends to be longer or taller. You can certainly have a shorter shadow, sure, when the sun is closer to straight up noontime, but I mean, you can also cast a very long shadow. It's not that you're tall, but your shadow is. And the shadow can be seen as what's left behind as well. I don't know. I love that. It's multiple layered. Finally, he says, you can cleanse me. With your melodies and harmonies, you can erase me. And at this point, we're so far divorced from being the musical puppet from the first half of the track that I don't know how we got here. I'm not sure what this song's trying to say. There's links here, I think, that I'm completely missing. And it's giving me a tough time finding how all of these different ideas are connected. So we're going to wrap this up here then. I got to dive into more, wow, owls, because I really enjoyed this. But what are your thoughts? Did you enjoy it? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that maybe you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on if I misspoke about something? Do you have a different opinion or perspective on this? Do you have a different take on the lyrics? And how do you relate to this track musically? You know, we talked about earlier about Bryan. Do you find this too ridiculous, or is this right up your alley? Let me know. Put all of that down into the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.